nothing but gold. That gold. That gold.
I'll be in a minute.
You get to cut that gold point here.
Auntie. Auntie.
Man, you know I don't take this.
Well, we're learning more this morning about a woman allegedly murdered by her Uber driver just yards from her home.
Metro Police now tell us that Uber driver allegedly confessed to that murder. Matthew Foltz is following this story this morning with more on a crime that police are calling not only disturbing but disgusting. Good morning, Matthew.
Hey, good morning to you both. This is just a heartbreaking story all the way around. Metro Police telling us that they have arrested 29-year-old Francisco Valadez in connection to Chanti Dixon's murder. Now, officers say that they found Dixon on Sunday naked in a wooded area along Wagner Lane near East Raymond and Shervin Drive. She was found with gunshot wounds and pronounced dead at the scene. According to court documents, Dixon had ordered an Uber after she got off work around 3:30 Sunday morning. Police say Valadez gave investigators conflicting statements before admitting to shooting Dixon in the head while he was trying to have sex with her in the back of his car. Police also claims Dixon made him mad with something she said before shooting her.
This is disgusting, it's disturbing, and we, Ms. Dixon especially, her family, no one deserves to be treated this way in our community, and I am so sorry to her family that we're here today.
In the early hours of September 9, 2024, two children waited for their mother to return home. 13-year-old Dacian and 10-year-old Chanti sat by the window, watching for headlights to turn into their driveway. The night grew longer. Morning came. Their mother, Chanti Dixon, never arrived. The story of Chanti Dixon isn't just about how she died, it's about who she lived as. Friends described her as vibrant, resilient, and unfailingly generous. At 29, Chanti had built her entire world around her two children, creating stability despite personal challenges and financial pressures. She was the one who kept everyone together, recalls her sister in a statement to investigators. Family gatherings, birthdays, holidays, Chanti made sure everyone felt special. She never forgot anyone's birthday, even when she was working double shifts. Those who knew Chanti describe a woman of contradictions. Tough when facing adversity, yet tender with her children. Practical about life's demands, yet dreaming of better opportunities for Dacian and Chanti. Her apartment walls were covered with her children's artwork and school certificates, physical reminders of what drove her forward each day. Dacian, her son, inherited her quick smile and determination. Teachers noted his mother's influence and his persistence, how he'd tackle math problems repeatedly until solving them.
What snack am I? What snack am I? What snack am I?
Chanti, her daughter, carried her mother's warmth, often bringing home stray animals or sharing lunch with classmates who forgot theirs. Those kids were her entire world, says a neighbor who often watched them when Chanti worked late. She'd come home exhausted, but would still sit up helping with homework or listening to their stories from school. She wanted them to have opportunities she never had. Chanti's path wasn't easy. After leaving an unstable relationship with the children's father, she shouldered full financial responsibility for her family. With limited education and few options for well-paying work, she made difficult choices to ensure her children's needs were met. Employment at an Indianapolis strip club provided income that other available jobs couldn't match. The position allowed her to afford a small but comfortable apartment in a neighborhood with better schools. She worked primarily weekend nights, arranging childcare with trusted family members, maximizing her time with her children during weekdays. She never complained about the work, remembers a coworker. She'd say, "This job pays for my kids' future." She was saving for their college funds, even putting away small amounts from each shift. Despite societal judgment that often accompanies such employment, Chanti maintained dignity and purpose. She established boundaries, developed a regular clientele who respected her, and became known for her reliability among management. She was pursuing online courses in business administration during daytime hours, working toward career options that would eventually allow her more conventional hours. To her children, she was simply Mom, the woman who braided hair before school, checked homework, cooked their favorite meals, and created special traditions like Sunday movie nights with homemade popcorn. She protected them from adult worries, ensuring they experienced childhood joys despite financial limitations. Her social media, filled with photos of family outings to parks and community events, revealed her priorities. Chanti rarely splurged on herself, a fact noted by friends who saw her wearing the same few outfits while her children had new clothes for school. Birthday celebrations for the children featured homemade cakes and thoughtfully chosen gifts that reflected her attention to their individual interests. She knew exactly who her kids were becoming as people, said her mother. Dixon loved science, so she found free museum days. Chanti was artistic, so she always had supplies for her. Chanti saw them. Really saw them. The morning of September 8th began with routine normalcy. Chanti prepared breakfast for her children before taking them to her mother's house for an overnight stay while she worked. She hugged them goodbye with promises of picking them up the following morning to get ready for school. There was nothing to suggest this ordinary moment would be their final goodbye. That night, like many before, Chanti finished her shift at the club around 3:30 a.m. Security footage shows her checking her phone, likely arranging transportation home. Having worked a double shift, she was visibly tired but smiling as she waved goodbye to coworkers. Minutes later, she requested an Uber, a practical choice at that hour for a woman without personal transportation. At 3:34 a.m., Francisco Valadez accepted her ride request. Chanti stepped into his vehicle, expecting to be home to sleep a few hours before collecting her children. Neither her children nor her mother would ever see her alive again. The story of Chanti Dixon reminds us how quickly life can change, how a routine decision like choosing a rideshare can lead to unimaginable tragedy. As we continue examining what happened that night, I hope you'll stay with us to understand not just the crime, but the life that was lost and the lessons we might learn. If you're finding this story important, please take a moment to hit the like button. It helps others find this content too. Subscribe to our channel for more in-depth examinations of cases that matter, where we focus on the human stories behind the headlines. The comment section below is open for your thoughts or questions about rideshare safety, or share memories if Chanti's story has resonated with your own experiences. Now let's continue tracing the events of September 8th and the fateful ride that Chanti never returned from. September 8th had been a typical workday for Chanti Dixon. After dropping her children at her mother's home, she headed to the Indianapolis strip club, where she had established herself as a dependable employee. The night was busy but routine, nothing to suggest the danger that awaited her. Security footage from the club captured Chanti's movements as her shift wound down. At approximately 3:30 a.m. on September 9th, she clocked out, exchanged brief goodbyes with colleagues, and stepped into the quiet, early morning darkness. Tired after her double shift, Chanti opted for a rideshare service rather than public transportation, a decision based on convenience and perceived safety. At precisely 3:34 a.m., the Uber application on her phone matched her with driver Francisco Valadez, a 29-year-old who had been working with the platform for several months. The digital footprint created by this transaction would later become crucial evidence, marking the beginning of Chanti's final journey. Valadez arrived in his vehicle within minutes. According to the club's exterior cameras, Chanti verified the license plate against her app, following safety protocols, before entering the back seat. The car pulled away from the curb at 3:38 a.m., heading in the direction of her apartment, where she planned to sleep briefly before collecting her children for school. GPS data from the Uber application shows that the trip initially proceeded along an expected route. Approximately 7 minutes into the journey, however, the vehicle made an unscheduled stop. This deviation, lasting 4 minutes according to the timestamp data, wasn't unusual enough to trigger any automated safety alerts within the app. When the vehicle resumed motion, it diverted from the optimal route to Chanti's home address. Whether Chanti noticed this change is unknown. The digital trail shows the car traveling toward a less populated area, eventually stopping in a location that would later be identified as approximately half a mile from wooded terrain near her residential neighborhood. What transpired inside that vehicle has been reconstructed through forensic evidence and Valadez's subsequent statements to investigators. According to these accounts, Valadez initiated conversation that quickly turned inappropriate. He propositioned Chanti, offering money in exchange for sexual acts. Chanti refused his advances firmly but politely, attempting to defuse the situation without escalation. According to Valadez's later statement, her rejection, particularly what he perceived as amusement at his suggestion, triggered an immediate and violent response. Without warning, Valadez pulled a handgun he regularly carried and fired a single shot at Chanti's head. The gunshot occurred while the vehicle was stationary, approximately 12 minutes after the journey began. The impulsive nature of this action was evidenced by the chaotic aftermath. Blood spatter patterns throughout the rear passenger area indicated no struggle or anticipation of the attack. The digital record from the app ends at this point, showing the ride as completed, though Chanti had never reached her destination. The application data shows no emergency button activation or unusual activity from Chanti's account, suggesting the speed with which the situation deteriorated gave her no opportunity to seek help. What followed demonstrated calculated attempts to conceal the crime. Valadez drove to a secluded area where he removed Chanti's body from the vehicle. He transported her remains to a wooded location near her neighborhood, a decision investigators later suggested might have been influenced by information he gathered during their brief interaction about where she lived. In this isolated setting, Valadez committed further violations against Chanti, attempting a sexual assault on her remains before abandoning her body, partially concealed by underbrush. Her 2 cell phones were discarded nearby, thrown haphazardly among fallen leaves. The next morning, September 9th, the consequences of Chanti's absence began to ripple outward. Her mother, expecting to hear from her daughter about picking up the children for school, received no response to calls or messages. By afternoon, family members had filed a missing person report, providing police with Chanti's description and recent activities. At 5:17 p.m. that same day, a local resident walking their dog along the trail that bordered the wooded area noticed something unusual among the vegetation. This discovery prompted an immediate call to emergency services. Police arrived within minutes, quickly establishing a perimeter around what was now clearly a crime scene. The responding officers confirmed what Chanti's family had feared most. She had been found deceased, the victim of an apparent homicide. The medical examiner would later determine that she had died from a single gunshot wound to the head, delivered at close range. As night fell on September 9th, detectives began the painstaking process of evidence collection at the scene. Under portable lights that illuminated the woods, investigators photographed, documented, and recovered items, including Chanti's discarded phones, electronic devices that would soon provide the crucial connection to her killer. For Dacian and Chanti, waiting at their grandmother's home, the devastating news would forever divide their lives into before and after. Children whose mother had left for work but never returned, victims of a senseless act of violence that began with an everyday decision to request a ride home. The discovery of Chanti Dixon's body on September 9th triggered an immediate full-scale investigation by the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department.
Disgusting. It's disturbing. No one deserves to be treated this way in our community.
From the outset, detectives recognized the need for a multifaceted approach that would combine traditional investigative techniques with digital forensics. The case would ultimately demonstrate how modern technology creates digital footprints that can be nearly impossible for perpetrators to erase. Within hours of identifying the victim, investigators obtained Chanti's recent phone records, which revealed her last known action: requesting an Uber ride at 3:34 a.m. after completing her shift. This digital timestamp became the anchor point for the entire investigation, providing detectives with a concrete starting position from which to work backward and forward in time. the IMPD immediately contacted Uber headquarters with a formal request for all data related to Chanti's final ride. The company's cooperation provided investigators with critical information: the identity of driver Francisco Valadez, the precise pickup location, the route taken, the unscheduled stop made during the journey, and the final destination, which differed significantly from Chanti's home address. The GPS data was exceptionally valuable, noted the lead detective in official case documents. It gave us minute-by-minute positioning of the vehicle throughout the entire trip, including locations where it remained stationary for extended periods. This digital trail allowed investigators to methodically canvass specific areas where the vehicle had stopped, resulting in the discovery of additional evidence that might otherwise have been overlooked. The precision of the data directed officers to search focused locations rather than vast general areas, conserving investigative resources while maximizing results. Simultaneously, forensic teams processed the scene where Chanti's body was discovered. The recovery of her 2 cell phones proved particularly significant. These devices, discarded near her body, contained intact data, including text messages, photographs, and app usage history. Analysis confirmed that no activity occurred on either device after 3:38 a.m., the exact time she entered Valadez's vehicle. As digital evidence accumulated, detectives located Valadez through Uber's records and brought him in for questioning on September 10th. His vehicle, identified through the app's information, was impounded for forensic examination. The car yielded substantial physical evidence despite apparent attempts to clean the interior. Utilizing specialized forensic techniques, the crime scene unit detected blood residue in the rear passenger area. DNA analysis later confirmed this blood belonged to Chanti Dixon. Additional evidence included a single bullet casing recovered from beneath the front passenger seat, suggesting the weapon had been fired inside the vehicle. A search warrant executed at Valadez's residence led to the recovery of a handgun. Ballistics testing confirmed this weapon matched the caliber and rifling patterns of the projectile recovered during Chanti's autopsy. Additionally, investigators found clothing with trace evidence consistent with the woodland area where her body had been abandoned. When first questioned, Valadez offered investigators a contradictory narrative that attempted to deflect responsibility. His initial statement suggested he had completed the ride without incident, claiming another passenger may have entered his vehicle after Chanti's trip concluded. When presented with the GPS data showing his exact movements, he altered his account, claiming he had given Chanti a ride but had dropped her off safely at her requested destination. As evidence mounted, Valadez's narrative continued to evolve. Confronted with the blood evidence from his vehicle, he suggested Chanti had been injured prior to entering his car. When shown the ballistics match between his firearm and the fatal bullet, he claimed the weapon had been stolen and recently recovered. The turning point in the interrogation came when investigators presented Valadez with the complete timeline reconstructed from multiple data sources. Security footage from the club showing Chanti entering his vehicle, GPS data tracking every movement of the car, cell tower pings from his personal phone, placing him at the disposal site, and forensic evidence linking him directly to the crime scene. On September 12th, faced with overwhelming evidence, Valadez provided a full confession. He admitted to shooting Chanti after she rejected his sexual advances and, as he perceived it, laughed at his proposition. His statement revealed the impulsive nature of the violence, a momentary rage triggered by perceived humiliation rather than premeditated intent. Further investigation uncovered testimony from Valadez's own mother, who confirmed he regularly carried the firearm found in his possession. This detail corroborated the spontaneous nature of the attack, while eliminating any defense claim that the weapon had been acquired after the fact. Based on the comprehensive evidence and confession, prosecutors filed formal charges against Valadez: felony murder, attempted rape, and abuse of a corpse. The strength of the case, built on the foundation of both digital and physical evidence, left little room for legal maneuvering by the defense. Throughout the investigation, the IMPD maintained close communication with Chanti's family, providing regular updates while protecting the integrity of the case. The department also coordinated with Uber's security team, which permanently removed Valadez from their platform and reviewed their driver screening protocols in response to the incident. The investigation into Chanti Dixon's murder demonstrated the evolving nature of modern detective work, where digital breadcrumbs often prove as valuable as physical evidence. It also highlighted the rapid investigative response that can occur when technology companies cooperate fully with law enforcement, a collaboration that ultimately ensured Chanti's killer would face justice. We're halfway through uncovering the full story of what happened to Chanti Dixon. If you're finding this investigation important to understand, please take a moment to like this video. It helps others discover this content too. I'd also appreciate if you'd subscribe to our channel for more in-depth true crime coverage that prioritizes victim stories. The comment section below is open if you have thoughts about rideshare safety or questions about digital evidence in modern investigations. Coming up next, we'll examine Francisco Valadez's background and motives to understand what led to this senseless act of violence. Francisco Valadez, the 29-year-old Uber driver responsible for Chanti Dixon's death, presented a complex profile that defied simple categorization. Prior to the events of September 8th, he maintained a relatively clean record with law enforcement, a fact that would later prompt questions about the effectiveness of rideshare companies' background screening processes. Investigators piecing together Valadez's history found few indicators that might have predicted his violent potential. Neighbors described him as quiet and largely unremarkable. His employment record showed steady if unexceptional performance as a rideshare driver, with passenger ratings that never flagged concerning behavior. Yet beneath this ordinary exterior lay significant psychological issues that emerged during his interrogation and subsequent confession. When questioned about his motives, Valadez revealed deeply rooted insecurities and an inability to process rejection in healthy ways. Perhaps most notably, he disclosed to investigators that he was, at 29, still a virgin. A personal detail he seemed to consider relevant to explaining his actions. This sexual inexperience became central to understanding the dynamics that led to violence. According to Valadez's own statement, the interaction with Chanti began as a standard rideshare journey, but shifted when he developed an immediate attraction to his passenger. Rather than maintaining professional boundaries, he initiated conversation that quickly turned inappropriate. As reconstructed from his confession, Valadez propositioned Chanti during the ride, offering her money in exchange for sexual acts. This unexpected advance from her driver placed Chanti in an immediately vulnerable position, alone in a moving vehicle with an increasingly unpredictable man. Her response, according to Valadez, was firm refusal, accompanied by what he perceived as laughter at his suggestion. This perception that his proposition had been met with ridicule triggered an immediate emotional crisis for him. What investigators identified as profound fragility in his self-image combined with the humiliation he felt in that moment to produce a lethal response. In his statement, Valadez described reaching for the handgun he routinely carried and firing a single shot at Chanti's head without warning or hesitation. The impulsive nature of this action suggested not a planned attack, but rather a spontaneous eruption of violence triggered by wounded pride, a moment of rage that permanently ended one life and irrevocably altered many others. What followed demonstrated both panic and calculation. Rather than seeking help or reporting the incident, Valadez drove to a secluded area where he removed Chanti's body from his vehicle. The subsequent attempted sexual assault on her remains indicated a disturbing disconnect from reality and an objectification that extended beyond her death. The physical evidence at the woodland disposal site showed Valadez made minimal efforts to conceal the body, covering it partially with natural debris before discarding her phones nearby. He then returned home and attempted to clean his vehicle, actions that demonstrated awareness of wrongdoing while revealing a notable lack of planning or sophistication in covering his tracks. In the hours following the murder, Valadez continued his normal routine, even accepting additional rideshare requests, behavior that prosecutors would later characterize as showing profound indifference to human life. When investigators first made contact with him, He projected confidence in his ability to mislead them, offering the first of several contradictory explanations. This confidence quickly eroded as detectives presented the extensive digital and physical evidence linking him to every stage of the crime. His shifting narratives, initially denying any incident, then suggesting another individual was responsible, and finally acknowledging his presence while minimizing his role, demonstrated both consciousness of guilt and increasing desperation as the investigation tightened around him. The full confession, when it finally came, was notable for what prosecutors described as a disturbing lack of genuine remorse. Instead, Valadez focused on his own emotional state, repeatedly returning to the perceived humiliation he felt when rejected and attempting to frame his actions as an understandable response to this provocation. Marion County prosecutors moved swiftly following the confession, filing multiple serious charges. Felony murder as the primary charge, with additional counts of attempted rape and abuse of a corpse. The combination of charges reflected both the killing itself and the subsequent violations, creating a case with potential for maximum sentencing upon conviction. Court records show Valadez was assigned a public defender, who initially entered a not guilty plea during arraignment proceedings, despite the confession. This standard legal maneuver preserved options for potential plea negotiations, though prosecutors indicated little interest in reducing charges, given the strength of their evidence and the severity of the crime. Valadez was held without bail, deemed both a flight risk and a potential danger to the community. As the case moved toward trial, media coverage intensified, particularly focusing on questions regarding rideshare safety protocols and whether additional screening might have identified potential warning signs in Valadez's psychological makeup. Within the criminal justice system, the case progressed methodically toward trial, with pretrial hearings establishing the admissibility of the extensive evidence collected by investigators. For Chanti's family, these legal proceedings represented merely the beginning of a long journey toward justice, a process that could never truly compensate for their immeasurable loss. The murder of Chanti Dixon left profound voids in multiple lives, with her children bearing the heaviest burden. 13-year-old Dashun and 10-year-old Chanti faced the sudden absence of their mother. The person who had structured their world, advocated for their education, and provided both emotional and financial stability. Family members described the children as withdrawn in the weeks following their mother's death, struggling to process a loss that defied explanation. "They keep asking when she's coming home," Chanti's mother told reporters during a community vigil held in her daughter's memory. "How do you explain to children that someone took their mother simply because she said no?" The extended family network rallied around the children, establishing a support system to address both immediate needs and long-term care. Community members, including Chanti's co-workers, organized fundraising efforts to establish education funds for both children, honoring what they knew to be Chanti's highest priority. Beyond the immediate family, the case prompted serious questions about safety in rideshare services. The Indianapolis incident joined a growing list of violent crimes connected to these platforms nationwide, creating momentum for substantive changes in how such companies operate. Safety advocates pointed to specific gaps in the current rideshare model that Chanti's case highlighted. The primary concerns centered on driver screening processes, which critics argued were insufficient to identify individuals with concerning psychological profiles but no criminal history. Francisco Valadez, with his minimal prior record, had easily passed the standard background checks despite carrying a firearm during rides, a violation of Uber's stated policies. In response to mounting pressure, several concrete reforms gained traction. First, advocates pushed for mandatory installation of surveillance cameras in all rideshare vehicles, equipment that might have deterred Valadez, or at minimum, provided immediate evidence of his actions. These systems, already implemented in traditional taxi services in many cities, create a visual record of each journey, while signaling to both drivers and passengers that their interactions are being monitored. Second, policy experts recommended enhanced cooperation between rideshare companies and law enforcement, including faster data sharing protocols during emergencies and standardized procedures for reporting suspicious driver behavior before it escalates to violence. Third, technology improvements became a focal point for reform. While Uber and similar platforms already offered features like ride-sharing options and emergency buttons, Chanti's case demonstrated the limitations of these tools. Proposed enhancements included automatic alerts triggered by unusual stops or route deviations, real-time monitoring systems, and simplified emergency protocols requiring just one touch to alert authorities. For individual users, the case offered several crucial lessons about personal safety when using rideshare services. Safety experts emphasized the importance of verifying driver identity and vehicle information before entering, sharing trip details with trusted contacts, remaining alert and minimizing distractions like headphones, trusting instincts about uncomfortable situations and being willing to end rides early, sitting in positions that allow quick exit behind the passenger seat rather than directly behind the driver, having emergency numbers pre-dialed and ready. The case also illuminated broader societal issues beyond rideshare safety alone. Conversations emerged about gender-based violence, particularly how men's responses to rejection can sometimes escalate to dangerous levels. Educators and advocacy groups pointed to Valadez's extreme reaction as an example of how entitlement and fragile self-image can combine with access to weapons to produce tragic outcomes. Additionally, the economic vulnerabilities that led Chanti to work late hours and rely on rideshare services highlighted persistent inequities facing single mothers. Working women, particularly those in night shift positions without personal transportation, face heightened risks that intersection with economic necessity. In the legal and regulatory sphere, the case accelerated legislative discussions about rideshare oversight. Several states began considering bills requiring enhanced background checks, periodic driver reviews, and explicit training about appropriate driver-passenger boundaries. For Indianapolis specifically, the tragedy prompted community-led initiatives, including volunteer ride programs for late-night workers and safety workshops focused on transportation options. These grassroots responses demonstrated how Chanti's story motivated concrete action beyond mere outrage. Uber itself announced a comprehensive safety review, including re-examination of driver screening protocols and accelerated development of new in-app safety features. While critics questioned whether corporate responses would prove substantive or merely reactive public relations, the attention nonetheless created pressure for meaningful change. The story of Chanti Dixon, mother, provider, victim, continues to resonate because it exposes vulnerabilities in systems many people use daily without contemplation. Her life, characterized by devotion to her children and determination to create opportunities for them, stands in stark contrast to its senseless ending. As we conclude Chanti Dixon's story, I hope it serves not just as a warning, but as motivation for positive change. Her children deserve to grow up in a world where their mother's experience leads to greater safety for others. If this documentary has affected you, please take a moment to share it with someone who uses rideshare services. The awareness you spread might save a life. I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel for more content that examines important stories with respect and purpose. Your likes and comments help this information reach those who need it most. The comment section is open for your thoughts on rideshare safety or your own experiences. Together, we can honor Chanti's memory by working toward practical solutions that protect vulnerable individuals in similar situations. Thank you for joining me in remembering Chanti Dixon, a mother whose story deserves to be told.